Part 103. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1024. One group conducts screening of weekly virulent strains. One group is doing research on vaccine production methods. One group is doing research on how to preserve vaccines. One group is conducting research on vaccination methods. The experimental group uses epidemic technique to induce vaccination of virus strains, and the control group uses injection to induce vaccination of virus strains. The 20 plague mages, as well as the mages who were originally in the research institute, were driven to a pulp by Gretel. Just preserving the vaccine exhausted the energy of that group of magicians. Dissolve the vaccine in distilled water. Dissolve the vaccine in sterile saline. Use 0.5%, 1%, 2%, 5% glycerol solution to dissolve the vaccine. Use 5% sucrose aqueous solution, 5% sucrose skim emulsion, 1.5% gelatin aqueous solution, 1.5% cornstarch solution. Save at room temperature, save at 4 degrees above zero, save at 0 degrees, save at -1 to 4 degrees, store at -20 degrees, and freeze dry at -70 degrees. Save it for 1 day, 5 days, 15 days, 30 days, half a year, a year. Do all the combinations again. The key point is that it doesn't end once you do it. The preserved vaccine will need to be thawed, diluted, and injected into the mice again when the time is up. Then observe the condition of the mice to see if they are sick and whether they have acquired immunity. Are you going too far in training them like this? As Greet flipped through each set of reports submitted page by page, Archmage Hines couldn't help but complain. Even if you don't know exactly what to do, at least you have a general idea. Are you going to let them try combinations one by one until they die? I just don't know how to do it. Gretel spread out his hands confidently. I know how to do it. I started directly. What do you want them to do? I just don't know, so I ask them to try the plans one by one. Don't worry, when they make other vaccines next time, they will have these plans at least. It can be done, take it out and try again. No matter how Greet squeezed his labor force, the research and development of a live attenuated yellow fever virus vaccine finally bore fruit little by little. The stable attenuated strain has successfully passed the test of 5 consecutive generations of transmission. The virus genetics is stable and there is no sudden return of virulence. Research on vaccine production methods, using 7-day-old chicken embryos to inoculate the virus strain into the yolk sac, cultivating it at 37.5 degrees Celsius 38 degrees Celsius after inoculation, and harvesting it in 70-80 hours, with a sufficient and stable supply of eggs and low prices, defeated the small market. Rat group and rabbit group. What, cell group? Sorry, the cell group still failed to nourish the cells and missed the chance to participate in the competition. The vaccine preservation group determined the optimal plan for harvesting chicken embryos and storing them at -40 degrees Celsius. After absorbing the liquid to confirm its sterility, grind, centrifuge, and freeze dry and seal. As for the vaccination group, currently, it seems that the experimental group has fast vaccination speed and high efficiency. The disadvantage is that the vaccination effect is unstable. Greet flipped through the experimental records in his hand, the experimental records of inoculating the mice, and discussed with Archmage Hines and others. It may be that plague spell requires magician control. Different magicians have different spellcasting strengths, even the same magician will have different spellcasting intensity each time due to his mood and control level. This difference in intensity, so far, has not affected the protective efficacy of the vaccine. Obviously, there is a lower limit to the intensity of epidemic technique that can be stimulated, but it has affected its safety. In mice vaccinated with epidemic technique, an average of 1 adverse reaction occurred in every 100 cases, including but not limited to local redness and swelling at the injection site, pain, poor food intake, fatigue, moderate fever, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, convulsions etc. Please, this is a disease spell, Archmage Hines sneered. What other result do you want? It's just a little bit of discomfort, which is very mild compared to death from illness. But the control group, that is, the group injected with syringes, is much safer. Greet turned another page of the information in his hand. So far, the adverse reaction rate is less than 1 in 1,000. In terms of vaccine safety alone, injection with a syringe is a better method. But the syringe is too troublesome, Lynn said softly to Greet's right. For this project, he followed Greet from beginning to end, sucking, injecting, and dealing with syringes until he felt like vomiting. Disinfecting so many needles every day is a very troublesome thing, let alone the research institute. We have to inject millions of native people down the mountain. I don't think everyone will disinfect them well. That's the trouble. Greet nodded slightly. In this world, no one knows better than him what will happen if syringes and needles are not properly disinfected. In the world before time travel, even with the widespread use of barefoot doctors, even with the productivity of the 1970s and 1980s, and vaccination in mountain villages, there were still some places that were not strictly disinfected. The result is widespread cross-infection. In a village, if one person has hepatitis B or something, it will often lead to the whole village being infected. The level of productivity and personnel training at that time was still like this. In this world full of natives, Greet couldn't even imagine it. Using a syringe will cause widespread infection, the disease in one person will spread to everyone. Then what do you want? Archmage Hines frowned. Gretel turned her face and stared into his eyes expectantly, her face full of matter-of-factness. I would like to ask you to try and develop an inoculation device. Carve the spell model, put the standard strength magic crystal energy in it, and put the poison seeds in dash. He gestured and pressed with his hand. Ka. The output is stable, the range is stable, and the adverse reaction rate is controlled at a very low range. Isn't this great? That's good, but why should this change-related thing be blamed on me? Archmage Hines really wanted to complain. However, under Greet's expectant gaze, he still mumbled in response. Okay, I'll do the job. It's a necromancy spell after all. It won't be hard for me to dig a little deeper. Should we start now? We have to wait a little longer. Gretel smiled. The vaccine still needs to be tested on monkeys. There is no problem with monkeys. The safety will be tested on humans. After the safety is confirmed, the effectiveness will be determined, and then large-scale vaccination will be carried out. At this last step, it is the testing of epidemic techniques that contributes. Opportunity. Wait, Archmage Hines looked at Gretel warily. Try it on people? You wouldn't be the first to try it on yourself, right? I'm warning you, if you really dare to do this, I will take you back to see your teacher. If it was in his previous life, Gretel, following in the footsteps of his predecessors, might have actually administered the first vaccine to himself. But now, he just spreads his hands. My physique is at the level of a knight after all. If you hit me, the reaction will be very small, and the safety test will not be accurate. According to what you said, if you weren't physically strong enough, would you really want to test it on yourself? Archmage Hines couldn't help but roll his eyes. Besides, did you forget any projects? What? The vaccine must be given to that snake god. If it uses the disease technique to amplify your vaccine, one dose can be given to 100 people. Aren't you going to have less vaccine to sell? This is also up to you. Greet spread his hands. How to communicate with the snake god, how to train the indigenous god, how to get the maximum benefit from it. This kind of difficult job, if the 18th level boss doesn't come forward, do you expect me to be a 10th level novice? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of there will be more than 10 days of 38-40 days in the future. It's so painful. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 1025. Monkey Safety Experiments. Pass. Vaccine Effectiveness in Monkeys. Pass. Monkey Vaccine Protection Period. The protection period requires constant experimentation, 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, keep experimenting. Forget it, skip it, just do experiments on people. Then, the necromancers ordered the prisoners according to the book, picked from the prisoners, and discovered a very embarrassing thing. However, these prisoners of war are all professionals, the lowest level civilians and non-professionals required by His Excellency the Lord of the Plague are not available at all. Isn't this nonsense? If you are not a professional, how dare you follow us to rob the Eagle Kingdom? Even if you are a pirate or an indigenous warrior, you don't have the qualifications to join the team as a handyman without a second, third, or fourth level professional level. But, if there are no civilians, who should we use for experiments? Is it okay to just use professionals? Or go and tell the Lord of the Plague to just use existing prisoners of war? The 15th level necromancer Wendell Jennings, a disciple of Archmage Hines, faced the eager looks of his subordinates and shook his head vigorously. You cannot use existing prisoners of war. The Plague Lord is very strict about the experimental conditions. If he uses professionals instead of non-professionals without authorization, he will directly declare the experiment a failure. That's right. The necromancers looked at each other. Every one of the people here has been scolded by Gretel, and has been hit on the wrist by his elusive transparent hemostat. I dropped something and bent down to pick it up. I tried to turn on the centrifuge without balance clamping. I didn't use an alcohol cotton ball to wipe the mouth of the reagent bottle before opening it. If you dare to change the experimental subjects without authorization, it is probably not a matter of being scolded to death. They may be kicked out. What should we do? Don't alarm the Plague Lord about this matter. I'm going to tell the teacher to recruit the indigenous women and children who help raise chickens and rabbits here for experiments. Then it's up to you. Archmage Jennings took advantage of Greet's absence to talk to the teacher about the difficulty. Archmage Hines immediately rejected. The Aboriginal women and children here can't be used. Not to mention 1 or 2 fell down, just lock them up alone and observe the vaccine reaction these days. Who will do the work? You? Or the few in your group guy? Or let the skeleton do it? Archmage Jennings' head shook like a rattle. What a joke, these people raise monkeys and mice, the ones in the clean area, to the point where they are almost vomiting blood. Who can help raise chickens and rabbits? Then, teacher. Forget it, I'll go talk to Trotto Annie. Archmage Haynes sighed. Let them provide a group of civilians. It doesn't take too many anyway. The first group only needs 50, and there will only be a few hundred after that. There are millions of natives around. Just give them a few and it will be done. Great. Teacher, you still have a way. Bang. A translucent mage's hand raised its index and middle fingers, and struck Archmage Jennings hard on the forehead. Don't think that I don't know. You are just too lazy to deal with them, so you just push the matter to me. I won't stay here for long. After a year and a half, I will leave it to you to take charge. Eagle of the Eagle, you have to be able to speak to these nobles in this country. Hee, teacher, isn't it because you are here and I can be lazy as long as I can? Archmage Haynes sighed and drifted away. When they went to Tenok City to talk about it, their Trotto Annie agreed without a second thought. You want some people who have no strength, can't be warriors, and can't be priestesses to do experiments. Are they guaranteed to be sent back safely? Can slaves be used? Yes. That's too easy. Don't worry, we will collect them today, and we will be there early tomorrow morning. Send people off to the mountains. Just a slave. Although the request is a bit more, strong slaves over 16 years old, under 30 years old, no sick ones, no injured ones, no pregnant ones. 50 people in total, half male and half. However, for the Eagle Country, that is nothing at all. I scanned the homes of all the great nobles, golden eagle warriors and female snakes, and they all came out with their eyes closed. The only ones unhappy were the slaves. When the rainy season comes, the slaves suddenly have more work to do. A year's harvest depends entirely on the season's rain. Those who weave fences, those who repair floating fields, and those who sow seeds, plant seeds. After taking care of the crops, you have to take care of your own chickens, ducks, dogs, and rabbits, and cover the chicken coops and rabbit cages with thatched roofs to prevent them from freezing to death in the rain. Only after serving them all can we repair our house. It's raining heavily outside, but it's okay if it's raining lightly inside. Don't let it rain heavily outside and water down the house. People are not happy about being so busy and being taken to the mountains. Although as slaves, they dare not resist the nobles, it does not prevent these slaves from crying. Can we come back? I don't know, my third aunt's little daughter was sent to the mountains. It's been several months and there's been no news at all. It is said that there are some dead people there, the master's family I served, their soldiers went there once and came back and said that there were skeletons walking around everywhere. Are we going to die too? Will we be taken there, have our hearts dug out, beheaded, and put on a wooden shelf? No. The team went slower and slower, slower and slower. The slaves who were sent to the top of the mountain were not like the wizards who could ride phantom horses. At worst, they could summon magic horses to travel. They could only walk on their own two legs. In order to prevent them from escaping, their hands were tied and strung together, causing them to stagger and stumble. Next to me, the soldier who was selected to escort the slaves was wearing a raincoat and walking in the rain with one foot in the water and one in the mud. He urged angrily. Let's go. Whoever doesn't want to go, just die here and someone in black robe will turn you into a living corpse and take you away. Become a living corpse? Forester Ashuedge's ears pricked up. After receiving Tupac Amaru's call for help, she traveled for a month from the remote rainforest to the Eagle Country. He hid his figure, quietly inquired around, and locked onto that place. Tupac Amaru's friends, comrades in arms, father of his beloved girl, brothers and warriors of the same tribe. Those who did not die in the war or in the living sacrifices should have been sent there. So where exactly is it? She has been wandering around Tenok City for 3 days and still has not found the suspicious location. Instead, she was almost swept out by the Mage Tower several times. It's rare to send a group of slaves to the mountains, what a great opportunity. Follow us quickly. Ashuedge licked her paws and turned around, turning into a smaller form. It is only a little over 2 feet long, and its whole body is grayish-yellow, covered with black spots and stripes. It is impossible to distinguish it with the naked eye when it lies on the mountain or in the bushes. She jumped lightly to keep up with the team transporting slaves, and from time to time she pricked up her ears to listen to the words on the other side. Go faster. I'm procrastinating, I want to die. The Plague Lord is waiting to use you. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Butterfly for the tip of 400 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 1026. Chapter 1023 Ashu Isong's Exploration and Doubts. Lord of the Plague, Lord of the Plague. Ash Moonsong lay on her back in the thick grass, licking the fur on her paws and slapping her tail against the ground. She had followed the team of slaves all the way to the vicinity of the research institute. The slaves filed in, but Ashu-Isang didn't dare to get close, and huddled into the grass across the road. In that research institute, the powerful and blazing aura of death was like a torch in the eyes of an elf close to nature like her. Moreover, it kept scanning around and around. That special wave of power swept across her body several times. If the institute wasn't located inside a crater and the mountain walls could hide her figure, she wouldn't even dare to get so close. If nature hadn't protected her, and if she hadn't turned into a tiger cat form and reduced her sense of existence, I'm afraid she would have been discovered. How should we detect the situation? Ashu finished licking the hair on her left front paw, and then started to lick her right front paw, thinking of a way while licking. Charging in head-on, grabbing people and leaving? I'm definitely no match. The people inside are too strong, and there's an entire mage tower as a backing. Turn into a small animal and go in to take a look? It is too dangerous. If it is swept by the mage tower, the small animal will have no fighting power. Or, give it a try and communicate with the plants inside. She lay on her stomach, her ears pulled back and her cheek pressed against the ground. Close your eyes, your spiritual power fills the meadow around you, and then extends outward little by little. Hey! No! The elf ranger dug at the ground angrily. The tiger cat form is not the most convenient form for communicating with plants, and the meadows on the mountains are not the rainforest she is most familiar with. Not to mention, there is very little vegetation in the institute. All the houses and squares are made of large stones, with no room for vegetation to grow on them. In the ditch and under the wall, not even moss grows. Disgusting human magicians. Disgusting mage towers, Ashu muttered dully. I can only use fossils to turn into mud and turn mud into stone to build houses, but I don't know how to appreciate the beauty of nature. It would be great to use mother trees to make a wizard's tower. However, complaining will not change the situation. Plants don't have it, small animals don't have it. For natural children, this is equivalent to covering their eyes and blocking their ears. Ask about animals again? Ashmoonsong tried to communicate with nearby animals and found that all flying insects, reptiles, poisonous snakes, and ants had avoided that place. It's terrible there. It's terrible. It's terrible, the birds pecking in the meadow told her. There is death. There is lots and lots of death. Death every day. Don't go. Ashmoonsong gritted her teeth, turned into a kestrel, and flew into the air. Pull up, outward, hover, suddenly tighten the wings, and fly rapidly from the low altitude above the mountain pass. In the institute, the power of death is so obvious. Ignorant, pure, innocent, large areas, mixed with cold pain and resentment. There are many. There are many. Especially in the central area, the aura of death is extremely concentrated and obvious. And among them, there are dozens of auras, swimming lively and lively, which are particularly harmonious with the one after another death aura. No need to guess, it must be those necromancers. Aizwich snorted in her heart. In the center of the research institute, Archmage Hines suddenly raised his head, his eyes were like lightning, and he looked upward. Who? What? Gretel looked at him blankly. Then raise your head, look up, and expand your mental power. Nothing. The ceiling is clean, and the sky above is empty. The place where birds don't poop, it was too clean when the institute was built. There are almost no plants, and there are no insects, rats or mice at all. What are the birds doing here? It's okay seeing him like this, Archmage Hines breathed out and waved his hand. There seemed to be something spying just now, however, it was not the Holy Sea or the Snake God. It might have been some golden eagle warrior passing by. Anyway, we are not afraid, let him go. Gretel shrugged and continued to engage in research and discussion with the Archmage. And in the air, Ashui Song, who was passing by, continued to concentrate on recalling the feeling just now. On the right wing of the Institute, a large number of life breaths were concentrated, some were strong and some were weak, but each one gave her a feeling of depression and stagnation. Are these prisoners of war? Is this the person Tupac asked her to save? Ashmoon Song quickly flew over the mountain pass and flew far away. In order to avoid being discovered, she swooped down the hillside for a long time, then flew over a mountain before descending. Falling on the tree tops, thinking intently. There was a clear, vibrant breath in the mountain pass just now. What was that? Is it the natural smell? Are there any of her tribesmen inside? Or, other human beings who worship nature? How could a natural child mix with those necromancers? Was he being tempted, forced, or even imprisoned inside, extracting power to do evil things? The kestrel jumped back and forth on the branches, having no clue for a while. After thinking for a while, he simply jumped off the ground and turned into a leopard. His body slumped, his foreclaws kicked open, and he ran down like lightning. The leopard form is the most commonly used transformation form when she patrols the forest every day. After turning into a leopard, it runs like flying. Even if someone watches from a distance, they can only see a gray-yellow after image flashing past. I'll go to the city below first to inquire. As she ran, Ashuej thought. I have been to this eagle country before. At that time, I didn't see any necromancers or anything like that. I want to find out how these people came here and what they plan to do here. Such a big building, such a big mage tower, couldn't have fallen from the sky. If you go to the city and ask around, you can always get some information. I don't believe that those people on the mountain eat and drink without relying on supplies from down the mountain. With the wind whistling in his ears, Ashuej ran at full speed and soon reached the lakeside at the foot of the mountain. She dove into the reeds and shook her body. Water droplets flew like rain on the wet leopard fur. After a moment, a vigorous elf woman with short green hair stood up from the reeds. She quickly looked around and raised her hand to cast a spell. A wave of magic shrouded it like water, and for a moment, the elf female warrior standing tall and tall by the water had turned into an inconspicuous indigenous woman. He lowered his head and frowned, looking down at the waterfront. And the Lord of the Plague, just hearing the name, it sounds like he is the one who calls the shots. Maybe the powerful spiritual power that was scanned just now is the Lord of the Plague. We must investigate carefully. God knows what the Plague Lord with such a strong aura of death can do. What if a wave of plague arises and turns the entire Eagle Kingdom into a dead place? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Red Comet Mars for the reward of 6,000 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1027. Chapter 1024 Ashui Song, hey, cubs of the same race. Turn back. Pam, female, 21 years old, civilian, injected for 30 minutes, no abnormal reaction. Atta, male, 18 years old, civilian, injected for 30 minutes, no abnormal reaction. Wayna, male, 25 years old, civilian. On the day of the human safety experiment, Gretel was very nervous and watched personally. In order to ensure the accuracy of the safety experiment, he did not hesitate to postpone the experiment date for 3 days. Arrange for the slaves to take a bath, put on clean and soft clothes, and let them rest and sleep to regain their strength. Then, check one by one to see if there is any pain, and apply healing skills if necessary. 3 days later, one person with high blood pressure and one person with obvious jaundice and suspected hepatitis were eliminated, and a total of 48 people underwent the experiment. Gretel is on the front line. Not only was he in charge, but he also invited Sarala. Stay with me. If my healing skills aren't enough, I'll have to rely on you. Huh, now you want me to accompany you? You drove me far away before? Huh, huh, huh. Sarala was finally dragged here and sat in a specially arranged hall, holding her chin and looking at the slaves boredly. Well, this is good, this is also good, this is still good. Let's just say, Gretel is too nervous. I have tried it twice before using mice and monkeys, and there was no problem at all. With just 50 people, what could go wrong? Compared to Sirara, Gretel is much more nervous. Fortune observation technique and the natural priest's spell to sense the breath of life kept scanning, and from time to time he walked into the subjects and observed them one by one. Well, you can actually tell whether you have allergies or sudden illness by just looking at it, but you can't be careless. Chicken embryo vaccine contains egg components, so people who are allergic to eggs will also be allergic to the vaccine. Be careful. Patients with severe allergies need immediate rescue, otherwise they will die. Fortunately, none of the 48 subjects had any obvious adverse reactions. After 30 minutes, the subjects were dismissed and went back to their rooms to eat, drink and rest without working. In the afternoon, evening, second day and third day of that day, Greet made another inspection tour. Early on the fourth day, it was finally announced that the first phase was successful. There is no severe allergy, no high fever, no redness, swelling/induration at the vaccination site, no large area rash/severe headache/severe nausea/severe abdominal pain. In short, the safety is passed. Next, test the effectiveness. Let them catch mosquitoes. Bite the sick mice first, and then bite people. Archmage Heinz immediately followed the instructions. Gretel quickly added. Inject the mice with the first batch of highly potent poisonous blood that was saved before, and put a few more mosquitoes in each room. Don't kill them. Archmage Heinz. Rightward arrow. Rightward arrow. He is worthy of being the Lord of Plague. If you are ruthless, you will be ruthless than us necromancers. Dozens of mosquitoes were placed in each room, and the subjects were not allowed to beat them to death. They had to endure being bitten all night. What kind of torture was this? Gretel spread his hands innocently. The immune efficacy test is like this. The challenge dose is theoretically the 50% lethal dose. That is, within a specified time, through a specified infection route, the minimum number of bacteria or toxins required to kill half of a certain animal of a certain weight or age. However, now, there is no reliable way to measure the virus content, or they cannot do it. To measure the virus content, the simplest method is the plaque assay, which means to feed a specific sensitive monolayer of cells and then infect the monolayer of cells with the virus. After a period of time, count the number of plagues on the monolayer cell culture plate. The group of mages in the cell group have not yet found a way to feed cells, let alone grow cells and viruses together. As for the more troublesome PCR method, are you kidding me? Where can I find PCR equipment? It can only make the subject suffer and be bitten a few more times. Fortunately, these mosquitoes are all cultured in the laboratory. Apart from yellow fever virus, they should not carry other viruses. Fortunately, although the first batch of subjects were bitten painfully and itchily, their arms and legs were like corns, and they had dozens or hundreds of blisters. They were not killed by yellow fever. Riding on this momentum of success, Archmage Heinz immediately requested a second batch of slaves and a third batch of slaves. Then, tests were started one by one on the women and children working in the institute, and on the prisoners of war. Even if 5 consecutive batches of tests are successful according to Greet's requirements, it can be promoted on a large scale. Ashmoon Song walked nervously around the square. 3 batches, 3 consecutive batches of slaves, the first batch of 50 people, the second batch of 100 people, the third batch of 200 people. After being thrown into the research institute in the crater, there was no response at all. No one came out alive, no bones came out, and even the supplies sent in could not be determined whether they were too much or too little. That research institute was like a huge mouth, wide open, swallowing people batch after batch without even a burp. The breath of death does not fluctuate much. Every day, I can feel a batch. What a terrible place. Should she go back to Elf Island and bring some big guys over? She alone, and the few forest rangers who are weaker than her, can't overturn this place. Also, I didn't find anything useful about the Plague Lord. To be precise, there is no way to find out at all. Maybe her current appearance means her status is too low? But neither the White Eagle Warrior nor the mid-level priestess can imitate that unique power fluctuation. Even if you can imitate, you can't sneak in. It's too easy for others to see through. Become an outsider. The local natives dare not talk to her. Over at the Mage Tower, it is easy to find that she has sneaked in disguise. When the whole city starts chasing him, it will be troublesome. I need to think of a way. What kind of way should I think of? Ash Moonsong milled around muttering. Suddenly, a word came to my ears. The Lord of Plague was here at that time. He raised his hand and hung that guy up from the street lamp. Street light. Street lights? By the way, why is there a street light here? Not in the entire square, not in the entire city, not anywhere else. There is a street lamp erected here. It is still the style from the old world. Ashuedge quickly raised his head. Not far away, there were two mages standing side by side. The older one pointed at the street lamp and spoke frothing at the mouth. Just hang on it. No one else dares to touch it, not even the snake god. Keep hanging, keep hanging. AI-11 UGE stared slightly. She didn't even need to cast a special spell, she could feel the lingering breath on the street lamp. Powerful, frightened, painful, resentful. There is also a particularly obvious aura that belongs to the glorious Holy See. Being able to hang such a powerful person from a street lamp with just a raise of his hand, and the other party would be unable to resist even if he resisted, this Lord of the Plague was probably about the same as her, or perhaps stronger than her. Be careful. Be careful. If you still can't find a chance after walking around for another 3 days, write a letter to the elders, go back to Elf Island and bring some big guys over. In such a cold and dangerous place, people who may be nature's servants are trapped. Inside, she couldn't just sit back and watch. Ashu Isong made up her mind and lay back near the crater to monitor from a distance. This time, she didn't have to wait long before something cheered her up. Someone came out of the research institute. Someone is out? And it's not the annoying necromancers, those guys who are cold and always surrounded by the power of death, and followed by skeletons. It's one of our own. He smells very fresh, and the power of nature surrounds him, singing softly. He was wearing a traveler's casual clothes and a big hat, and he was riding on a tall and strong silver moon deer. An elf girl was riding with him. Ashuedge sniffed her nose hard and frowned in confusion. What is the origin of this elf girl? Why can't she smell the scent of her own race? It smells like ice, snow, cool breeze, and mist. So strange. Why does she want to transform into an elf? Is she kind to us elves, or is she malicious? Is she kind or malicious toward the person surrounded by the power of nature? By the way, there is a tall and strong barbarian next to those two people. This combination is so strange. Be careful. Be cautious. If you don't understand clearly, you can't take action. Ash Moonsong lay down again. When they walked away, they turned into kestrel form again and flew over the research institute. That's right, in the research institute, the fluctuations of the power of nature can no longer be felt. The natural breath that I felt before was the person who just walked out? Why did he come out? Is he free? Who is the elf girl following him? Ashu Isong did not step forward directly. As the guardian of the forest, she has seen all kinds of humans and seen through all kinds of conspiracies. Using innocent and kind-hearted people as bait to ambush their forest guards didn't just happen once or twice. She distanced herself and followed quietly. As a senior forest ranger, Ash Moonsong is not worried about losing track of the target. Weeds, shrubs, birds, beasts, and insects will all guide her in the direction. On the contrary, if you zoom out from a distance, you can find out whether there is anyone following these people, or whether there is anyone with malicious intentions who has opened a net against her. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. The darlings of nature, strange elves, as well as barbarians and silver moon deer, left the city, walked down the plateau, and walked into the lowland jungle under the plateau. Ashu Edge was full of energy and followed closer and closer. The jungle is her home. It is also the home ground where she fights. Even if it wasn't the rainforest she had guarded for more than 100 years, the jungle here would give her cover, guidance, and help. She transformed into her panther form and silently moved through the shadows, observing. The natural favorite and the 2 people beside her were chatting and laughing, and had a very harmonious relationship. They seemed to be adventure partners. Moreover, Ashu Isong also made a new discovery. This natural darling has a familiar spell cast over him. It's a spell used by elves to cover up their appearance for a long time. Casting a spell once will last for decades, and most dispelling spells will be ineffective against it. This is the same race. It's a cub of the same race. Such a familiar smell, I can't smell it wrong. She stepped forward quietly. While Gretel, Ash Moonsong now knew his name, was walking deep into the forest alone, shouting, "Cyrilla, I'll pick some fruits, I'll be back soon, sneak up on him." From behind, he slapped his shoulder. "Hey! Cubs of the same race? Look back. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right?" Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1028. Greed walked hard in the jungle with an oak stick, 1 foot deep and 1 foot shallow. "I put all my energy into there is a pit at the foot, the tree root board wall in front is relatively high and you have to climb up, there is a muddy pond under the grass, don't step on it." Nature did not remind him, and the forest did not warn him. Everything around him is safe, even poisonous snakes and insects are automatically kept away. He just needs to walk carefully and avoid falling. "Hey!" A sudden greeting. Enthusiastic, cheerful, without any malice, but close to his back, the voice was only 1 step away from him. Following the greeting, something light and heavy patted his shoulder. Gretel pounced directly. While throwing himself down, he flicked his fingers to brush up his defense. High mage armor and protection from arrows are always on the body, as is protection from energy damage. Advanced resistance improvement, hurry up and add 1. Fire shield and glory shield are not affected, but the force field barrier has been raised, and the leaves and dead branches on the ground are shaking, and they will weave into walls anytime and anywhere. The nearby water pool also had faint ripples. As long as Gretel thought, he could respond to his call and form another water wall outside the barrier. This was the greatest defense he could achieve in an instant. However, how effective is this level of defense against a person who can sneak up behind you silently? Gretel. I really don't know what to do. I just hope that the other party really has no ill intentions. Naturally, he didn't call the police or yell to remind him. The man also said hello when he took action. Maybe, he really didn't mean any harm, right? Besides, Cyrilla is still nearby. Hello. Ash Moonsong was a little happy and a little unhappy. Fortunately, this cub of the same race is still very vigilant. When he felt her slapping him, he immediately prepared himself for defense. What makes me unhappy is that you don't believe me. I've already said hello to you before taking pictures of you. Of course, no warning was given. Why don't you believe me? This mixture of emotions lasted only a moment. The Black Panther jumped out from the cover of the jungle, rushed towards him, said hello, stretched out his paw to pat Gretel on the shoulder, and the next moment, Cyrilla rushed over like a whirlwind. Hey! She grabbed the panther's outstretched front paw. Pick it up, drag it, and throw it out with all your strength. How powerful is the silver dragon girl? Although the power that exploded out of such a desperate swing could not match that of an adult dragon, at least it was 60 to 70% as powerful. The Black Panther's forelegs were lifted off the ground, and his whole body was lifted up, almost like a shadow when he was thrown out. Not only is it fast, it also rotates horizontally with its trunk as the axis. At first glance, it looks like a black invincible Hot Wheel. If the balance is slightly changed, I will immediately become dizzy. Next, it hit the tree trunk with such a bang that the spine could be broken. Fortunately, Ash Moonsong has extremely rich combat experience. In Black Panther form, her flexibility, balance, and agility are all greatly enhanced. She stretched out her forepaws, adjusted her posture in the air, her tail kept changing directions, and soon regained her balance. At the same time, the surrounding vines, branches, and leaves came up layer by layer, weaving into a large green net in the direction in which she was thrown. There was a sudden rumble, and Ash Moonsong sank softly into the green and disappeared. Oops. Just kidding, why are you so harsh? A hearty, smiling voice rose from the vast green. The vines rebounded, the branches shrank, and the broken and crushed leaves flew around and slowly fell to the ground. Among the green branches and leaves, stood a tall and fit female elf warrior, with a corolla of white flowers on her short green hair, and a spear on her back. She stood far away and waved her hands towards Cyrilla. I don't mean any harm. I just came to say hello. This, she pointed at Gretel, who had just gotten up and stood next to Cyrilla. He must be a member of my race. I can smell his scent. He still has the covering magic of our elves on him. I won't hurt him. I really just want to say hello. Cyrilla clenched her fists tightly and looked at the other party warily without saying a word. Ashuedge spread her arms, palms forward, and tentatively walked over slowly. As he walked, he smiled brightly. Look, when I patted him in Black Panther form, even my nails didn't pop out. I patted him with a flesh pad. At most, it was just a light pat. By the way, let me introduce myself. My name is Ash Moonsong, Ranger of the Fertile Forest. Nice to meet you. My name is Greet Nordmark. Gretel cast a cleaning spell on himself, cleaned up his dusty appearance, and spread his hands towards her. At the same time, he lightly touched Cyrilla with his elbow. It's okay. She didn't mean any harm, and the forest didn't warn me. It was probably just a joke. Relax, it's really okay. Okay, the silver dragon girl muttered reluctantly. Relaxing his shoulders, he extended his hand to AI-11 UGE. My name is Cyrilla. Cyrilla Moonlight Flacegrid. Nice to meet you. Cyrilla Moonlight Flacegrid. Ash Moonsong read it carefully. Then his eyes lit up. Liuguang Shining Family. I understand, you are a dragon, right? No wonder you are so strong, no wonder you have become so skilled at turning into elves. I heard from the elders that many dragons like to turn into elves and walk around the earth. No wonder I smell it, the taste is different. You smell it? Cyrilla blurted out. While asking, he glanced at Gretel. Is the elf's nose that pointy? Why does Greet never say what does it smell or what does it smell like? Or are elves and half-elves really that different? Oh, I just turned into a black panther. Seeing her confused look, Ashuedge laughed heartily. My nose is usually good, but not that good. but in the Black Panther form, I can smell his scent, which is close to nature and full of vitality. And Miss Sarah, you are covered with clouds and mountain breezes. Yes, it tastes cool. Sarah finally laughed. Even Gretel laughed. The silver dragon's ice breath is very strong, and it likes to breathe clouds and mist every day. Recently, Cyrilla likes to play on the top of the high snow mountain. Isn't it just the cool smell of clouds and mountain breeze? After this introduction and explanation, the two parties finally eliminated their hostility and came together. Returning to the forest path, Gretel continued to introduce Ashmoon's song. This is Bernard. This is Aparo, you may call him Appa. Yo. Mr. Bernard, and Appa, hello. Ashuedge greeted everyone, including Appa, who stood on tiptoes and patted its antlers. Then, he returned his hand and wiped his face, wiping off 2 pieces of broken leaves stuck to his cheeks. I'm so sorry just now. I got too close. I'm so happy. Mr. Nordmark, you don't know how happy I am to see you come out safely. I've been worried about you before. Gretel? Where am I not at peace? I have been very peaceful. Do experiments every day, do experiments, control the progress of the experiments, check the mice, chicken embryos, monkeys, and subjects, the entire institute, even the 18th level Archmage Heinz, all follow my instructions work. The only unsafe possibility is an operational error and yellow fever infection. However, with removal of disease on the side, there is no danger if such a thing happens. His doubtful eyes were too straightforward. Ashuedge shrugged and smiled helplessly. Don't you feel it yourself? Such a heavy breath of death. Every day, there are so many deaths. I have been staying outside and can't get in. I feel that your breath is always inside. I am really worried. Gretel thought about that scene in his mind. It was both funny and dark. What should I do? I suddenly don't want to ask her what she guessed and what action she planned to take. Especially because there is a Lord of Plague there. Think about it, Lord of Plague, a necromancer with this name must be particularly powerful and notorious, Ashu-Isan continued. He continued with a sincere face and a voice full of fear. If you fall into the hands of such a necromancer, I am really scared. You don't know what you are suffering, but the aura inside is too powerful. I can't defeat it. I can't defeat it without the mage tower. I'm sorry that I can watch from outside. Ahem. Sirara tried to cough. He coughed and glanced at Greet with a strange look on his face, his silver blue eyes full of smiles. Bernard pressed his lips together hard, turned his head to the side, and made a hiccup sound in his throat. Even Apple lowered his head, digging his hooves hard at the soil on the ground, his nose flaring, and he was huffing and puffing. Ashuedge finally felt that something was wrong. She looked at Greet, Cyrilla, Bernard, and Appa, and asked hesitantly. What's the matter? Greet looked embarrassed. He took 2 steps back and half hidden behind Cyrilla, so that he could use Cyrilla to cover his face at any time and prevent Ashuedge from suddenly turning against him and chasing him to beat him. There may be a bit of misunderstanding here. In fact, the Lord of Plague you mentioned, this is actually my nickname. What? Ashuedge was stunned as if she had been struck by lightning. She widened her eyes and looked Gretel up and down, observing him as if she didn't recognize him. For a moment, he suddenly took a few steps back, turned into a black panther, and took a deep breath. That's right. It still smells fresh, fragrant, and surrounded by nature. Why did she, an obedient cub of her own race, suddenly become the Lord of Plague? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Giolan 2020. Chapter 1029. A half-elf and an elf looked at each other. Oh, if you look at it from the outside, it should be a human and a black panther, looking at each other. The black panther clawed the ground hard with all four claws, and all the cold nails popped out, sinking deeply into the broken leaves and soil in the rainforest. Push your hind legs hard on the ground, lean forward with your upper body, open your nose, and try to smell. I smell it. I smell it. I try to smell it. That's right, it's still the smell of acorns and oak trees, and it's still the smell of being surrounded, embraced, and pampered by nature. If you really hang out with the necromancers and do too many things that go against nature, it won't taste like this. Aizewij smelled and thought, subconsciously getting closer and closer. Greed huddled behind Cyrilla and stared at her nervously. If the Black Panther hadn't taken an attacking stance at all, he might have started running away. Are you kidding? The cheetah is the fastest animal in the world, and the Black Panther is not much slower. It also has agility bonus when attacking in the dense forest. With this full force pounce, he might have been scratched into a fishing net by his claws before he could react. Even so, Gretel jumped back and shook his hands wildly. I can explain. I can explain. Lord of Plagues is a joke made by the elders. Mainly because I have done some research on infectious diseases and found the causes of several infectious diseases. Here is the paper. Don't believe it, look. The Black Panther stood up on its hind legs, tilted its head and looked at the journal that was placed on the floating saucer and opened page by page with the wind. The next moment, she suddenly changed back to her human form, threw a cleaning spell on her hand, and turned it over carefully. Oh, it turns out to be like this. Oh, it's really inconvenient to live in the fertile forest. If we were on Elf Island, these papers should have been seen long ago. Gretel, rightward arrow. Rightward arrow. Do you elves usually travel in the kingdom of Kent? Or simply lurk in the parliament and become a magician? If you have any latest papers, can you send a copy back for everyone to read? Is there a possibility that the existence of this elf is something that the parliament, at least the legends, are well aware of and turn a blind eye to? Or, just stay in a smaller city, as long as you can order journals? Gretel kept this matter in mind and planned to ask Archmage Heinz later, or, if convenient, ask his teacher or senior fellow apprentices. As for the person in front of her, she may not necessarily know the details, and it is not easy to ask so many questions when they meet for the first time. In any case, after Ashuej flipped through the paper, the eyes he looked at Gretel softened. However, the worried look became more obvious. Then, Mr. Nordmark, why do you stay in the research institute and hang out with those necromancers? They kill every day and do things that go against nature. This is not good for you. Her expression was sincere, and she almost reached out to drag him far away from the research institute, and never let him get closer. It's just that it's our first meeting, so I don't want to overdo it, so I just tried to persuade you. Nature never prohibits killing, but nature hates excessive killing and meaningless torture. All elves who plan to take this path have become depraved without exception. Mr. Nordmark, you must stay away from them. Son. Gretel couldn't help but smile. He took another step back, put a little distance between himself and Ashuej, and said seriously. But, my research requires the assistance of those necromancers. If I leave them and the institute, what will happen to my project? Ashmoon Song. She froze in place, looking at Gretel as if she didn't recognize him, as if this obedient, pampered cub that couldn't even walk in the jungle had suddenly grown horns and a tail. After looking at it for a while, he turned his head to the left and then to the right. Miss Yinlong turned her face sideways, half turned her back to her, and her shoulders trembled. The corners of his mouth were raised desperately, and his nose made a sheesy sound. It was obvious that he just didn't want to laugh. The barbarian covered his mouth vigorously, and glanced at her and Gretel for a while, but his eyes stayed on Gretel more often. Every time I look over, my shoulders, chest, and even abdominal muscles tremble. Even the silver moon deer made a strange sound, chuck, 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 cheep, and stamped its hooves on the ground. It was obvious that everyone was laughing and laughing at Mr. Nodmark. Humans can be cunning sometimes, but silver dragons can't stand evil, insidious, and despicable things. The barbarian looked at the rough and straightforward man, but there was also a balance in his heart. If this naturally pampered cub is really doing something bad, they won't tolerate it. It seems that things are a little different from what she imagined. What happened? Ash Moonsong slowly raised her eyebrows. The 5 fingers of his right hand opened and closed, raising them threateningly. He opened his thumb and index finger together, then shook his head towards Gretel. Tell me. No problem. I told you, I can explain. Gretel spent a lot of time explaining to this enthusiastic elf sister what she was doing. However, a large amount of theoretical knowledge poured out in a short period of time, which still made Ashui Song, a fighting elf ranger, feel a little dizzy. Wait a minute, you said you killed so many animals to research and make vaccines. Yes. What about the slaves? Where are all the slaves and prisoners of war? Why did you kill them? Who said I killed them? Gretel looked confused. Aren't they all living well? I also cured those who were infected. No killing. No killing. Why do you only see people going in but no one coming out? Ashuej still couldn't help but feel heartbroken when she recalled the anxiety and sadness she felt when she saw those slaves stumbling and crying when they were sent to the research institute and never released again during her repeated inspections. Now that we have caught the real owner, we must ask clearly. Even if they are used for experiments, after the experiments are completed, they can always be released, right? Those slaves, the family is still waiting for them to return to reunite. The safety and effectiveness tests have been completed, and the protection time needs to be tested. Greet spread his hands. 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, you have to test every time. If you don't continue to test, how do you know how long the vaccine will last? Besides, you also know that these are slaves, put them back, and they will be hummed by their masters. If I die, who should I ask to verify the effect? It sounds reasonable. Ashui Song silently tapped the spear on her back, lost in thought. Greet didn't wait for her to figure it out, and immediately hit the snake with a stick. By the way, Sister Uge, are you here to do something? Is there anything I can do to help? And, there is something, can I ask you a favor? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to @Zyphio9187 for the reward of 100 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1030. Ashui Song also breathed a sigh of relief when she learned that this fellow member had not taken the wrong path. When Greet asked her about it, she said cheerfully, I met an indigenous boy in the fertile forest. His relatives became prisoners of war and begged me to save him. Since he had traveled thousands of miles in 3 or 4 months, I came over to take a look. He glanced at Gretel with a smile in his eyes. Now that I have met you, I just want to ask, are those people still alive? If they are alive, what conditions are required to redeem them? I will try my best to do it if I can. This obviously includes a willingness to help commitment. What's even more rare is that he is willing to redeem, not just asking Greet to let him go in vain. Gretel was in a good mood and nodded to her with certainty. I run the research institute, so it's not difficult to release a few people. Sister Uge, don't worry, as long as all the prisoners of war are still alive, Not one of them has died since they were sent to the research institute. After saying that, he walked towards the road. Ashui-san quickly stopped her. As long as you're alive. Don't worry, we're not friends and relatives anyway, so there's no need to delay your business. By the way, what did you say you wanted to do before? Can I help? That's right, I met a half-elf lady here. Gretel spoke eloquently. Only then did Ashuej know that the vaccine research and development had achieved initial results. Gretel was going to deliver the vaccine to Ms. Jasmine's husband, and by the way, he would accompany Cyrilla to relax and play in the plains under the mountain. Ms. Jasmine said that her father came from the rainforest in the south. If possible, I would like to ask Sister Uge to come with us and have a few words with Ms. Jasmine. Hey! What did I think it was? Ashuej waved her hand carelessly. I will go with you right now. Pointing the direction for the children of the tribe is what every elf should do. If she needs it, I can take her back to the fertile forest, or even accompany her for a spin. The elves around I know all the forest rangers. Gretel. He suddenly wanted to know how big a circle this turn was. Considering that the sister traveled thousands of miles from the southern rainforest to seek help from a native. This circle might be the entire Amazon rainforest. That thing occupies a small half of the southern continent. But Ash Moonsong obviously doesn't care about this horrific workload. In other words, she has regarded Jasmine's matter as her own. She followed Gretel lightly, looking left and right, and asking from time to time. Mr. Nordmark, when did you meet Ms. Jasmine? Where? How old is she now? What career path is she taking? What level is she? I have a husband, fortunately, I don't have children yet. Otherwise, if the children were young, they would really not be able to leave. Her husband's knee is injured, this is a bit troublesome. I'm not very good at treatment, Mr. Nordmark, do you have any experience with treatment? Where do they live now? There, I walked there. If I hurry, I will be there tomorrow. Ash Moonsong is a fun traveling companion. Greet and his party only dared to move along fixed roads, and even if they occasionally entered the jungle, they could only go a few dozen steps deep. However, Ash Moonsong, the forest guard, was at ease in the forest. After a while, I ran a few steps quickly, jumped up to a big tree, and came back with a bag of fruits. Throw one to Gretel, one to Cyrilla, and a bunch to Bernard and Appa. Come on, try it. This fruit is sour and sweet, and it tastes so good. After a while, he transformed into a black panther and ran into the forest. After a noise, a colorful pheasant came out. Then he released the transformation, holding the pheasant tied up by the vines in one hand, and said proudly, "That's what I'm going to eat tonight. Look, I've even found the eggs. When the time comes, I'll stuff them into the pheasant's belly and roast them. They'll be delicious and tender." After a while, he quickly rushed forward and stood in front of Appa. "You can't drink the water here. There are a lot of leeches in the water." He raised his face and listened hard. The long pointed ears turned into the round ears of a leopard at some point, and they turned slightly. "There is a waterfall not far ahead. I will take you there to drink water. The water in the waterfall is clean." Not to mention, she knew almost every type of flowers and plants on the roadside and could tell a story about each one. "Walk along the way," pointing along the way. "Look, this is a blood-red trumpet. The ends of its flowers are green, the middle is yellow, and the tops of the petals are bright red. Does it look like a long trumpet? This flower contains the power of the sun. For a long time, the indigenous people on the edge of the rich forest have used it to worship the sun god. This is the fairy leaf. Even though it looks inconspicuous, it has psychic powers. If you soak its dried leaves into water and drink it, you can see the spirit world. This is what is edible and what is inedible, what is delicious and what is not, what can be used to hold water, what can be used to weave ropes, what attracts poisonous insects, what will actively attack people. Ashmoon Song told her everything, and there was no plant in the jungle that she didn't recognize, and there was no animal that she hadn't touched before. That's all, Gretel. Cyrilla listened with interest, and followed Ashmoon Song into the woods from time to time. Then, hey! Wait! There was a ruckus. Don't just bump into each other just because your defense is strong. Look, you're getting sprayed by the smelly liquid. It was quite not lonely to have this jungle master walking with us and chatting along the way. Greet and his companions were following a road pioneered by the indigenous people, which was then fixed by the parliament into a trade route. On the road, people walked towards them from time to time. Natives carrying wooden spears, merchants carrying packages, and adventurers carrying swords. When they saw them, they all nodded respectfully, stepped aside, and let them go first. Greet nodded and smiled in return. It wasn't until the group of adventurers finished leaving that he sighed softly. If a vaccine can be successfully developed, these people who come to the Eagle Country will have a greater chance of returning safely. But if the vaccine is successfully developed, more people will disturb the tranquility of the jungle. Ashuej and Gretel stood side by side, with a hint of worry on their faces. Mr. Nordmark, have you ever thought about this? So many people break into the jungle and the damage to nature is very serious. Moreover, in order to make these vaccines, more killings will be caused. With the population increasing, the jungle will always have to be developed. With the vaccine, we can prevent them from cutting down trees and burning the forest. Greet responded calmly. He sat on Appa and leisurely told the elf forest guard the causes and consequences of developing the vaccine. The raid of the Holy Sea of Glory, the assistance of the Parliament, the large-scale blood sacrifice, the negotiations between the Parliament and the Eagle God and the Snake God. Developing the jungle can allow the Eagle God and the Snake God to gain greater faith power, thereby preventing blood sacrifices and killings. Isn't this also a good thing? As he spoke, Greet looked at the endless greenery ahead with deep eyes. In order to develop the jungle, humans once drained stagnant swamps, covered stagnant water with oil to kill mosquito larvae, and dumped large amounts of DDT in the forest. Aren't these actions harmful to nature? Relatively speaking, injecting everyone with yellow fever vaccine is still the gentlest method. Ashmoon Song was speechless for a moment. Injury is naturally not a good thing, nor is large-scale blood sacrifice. It was the lesser of two evils, but she couldn't tell what was best for the moment. At this moment, Greet turned to look at her again and asked seriously. As for the killings that occur in order to create vaccines, I may have a way to minimize them. Sister Uge, can you help me? Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geolan 2020. Chapter 1031. Ashmoon Song did not agree to Gretel's request, nor did she reject it immediately. She just said that she hoped to see the situation of the institute and decide whether she could help and whether she could help based on the results of the on-site inspection. As for the present, they still have to move on and go to the Flint and Jasmine Adventurer Supplies store at the port to visit the Jasmine couple. Of course, being of the same race is the most important thing. As for the research task, since there are necromancers from the entire research institute, it doesn't matter if it's a day or two late. Greet asked Ashuej carefully about the names of the people she wanted to save and what tribes they belonged to. Then she released an alchemy bird and asked the people in the research institute to improve their treatment. At least, don't die these days until he comes back. The elf forest guard watched the whole process with a smile, without stopping or making any additional demands. Just when I was camping that night, I ran into the jungle several times and brought out a bunch of various foods. Birds, small animals, big snakes, roots, fruits, mushrooms, leaves and wild fruits for seasoning, large leaves for wrapping. Light a fire and set up a clay pot. Pull out the feathers of the bird, clean out the internal organs, stuff the edible internal organs, eggs, mushrooms, and some wild fruits for seasoning into the bird's belly, wrap it with leaves, dig a pile of wet soil to wrap it, and bury it next to the fire. Skin an unknown animal, cut its flesh and bleed it, place the meat strips on the fire, and sprinkle salt and dry leaves on it. The starch-rich roots are thrown into a clay pot and stewed together with the beans pulled from the bushes and the snake meat cut into sections into a pot of thick soup. Oh, Sister Uge, you are so awesome. Sarala held a big bowl and ate without raising her head. While eating, she sighed vaguely. I didn't know there were so many delicious things in the jungle. If you cut a knife on this tree trunk, there will be sweet water. This fruit is sour, but when it drips on the meat, it tastes so delicious. Just dig in the mud twice and you can get it. Dig out the fragrant and glutinous tubers. Of course. Aizewage held her head high and her chest upright, with a matter-of-fact expression on her face. I have been guarding the fertile forest for more than 100 years. Whatever is edible, whatever is delicious, whatever tastes strange but can be used for seasoning, I can get it with my eyes closed. How about it? She looked at Gretel with bright eyes. Little Gretel, do you want to go to the fertile forest with me? Children of nature can develop best only by being close to nature and feeling nature. Staying with humans all the time will slow down the speed of advancement. Gretel hee. Fertile forest? Is it possible to build a hospital in that kind of place? Do you have the conditions to build a laboratory? Are there conditions for recruiting researchers? Nothing will slow down my progress. If the teacher hadn't said that when you reach level 9 or 10, you should travel as much as possible to broaden your horizons, I wouldn't have stayed in the Eagle Country for several months. Sarala hee. Into the rich forest? Just Gretel? He only dares to walk on the road in such a shallow jungle. If he enters the rich forest, can he walk 1 mile in a day? Bernard glanced up at them, silently tore off a bird's leg and stuffed the whole thing into his mouth. Slow down the progression speed. He has been a follower of Gretel until now, and he has watched Gretel go from a level 1 mage to level 2, level 3, and level 10. Others have to be stuck for 3 to 5 years to advance to the next level. If they are unlucky and don't have enough talent, they can be stuck for more than 10 years. He is stuck at 1 level every year. Say it again, say it again. Gretel answered vaguely. AI-11 Uge smiled sweetly and did not rush him. As a cub, she has not been trained in the jungle and is a little scared when she sees the forest. She understands. Kidnapping should be done slowly. As a senior, she has enough patience to train cubs of her own race. Hey, it's really hard for a cub to grow up among humans. Without seniors to take care of it, it doesn't even know how to navigate the jungle. At this level, if he has the opportunity to go to Elf Island in the future, he will be treated as a different kind by those old-fashioned people. With this mood in mind, when setting out the next day, Ashu Isong intentionally or unintentionally introduced some common sense in the jungle to Gretel and his party. What kind of water is drinkable and what kind of water is not drinkable? What kind of trees can be used for camping and what kind of trees are best kept away from? How to catch birds, how to catch snakes, how to catch animals to eat, how to distinguish normal mushrooms from poisonous mushrooms. After talking and chatting for a long time, the salty sea breeze finally hit our faces. AI-11 Uge took a deep breath of sea breeze and raised a smile. We're here. Little Greet, where is the MS Jasmine you mentioned? Let's get there quickly. Greet stood on the high hillside in a daze, looking far into the distance. On the sparkling sea, 2 or 3 sailboats are furling their sails, slowing down, and slowly entering the harbor, and on the far distant skyline, what seems to be a black flag is flying high. Is it a pirate? He threw himself an eagle eye technique and looked hard. However, the ship with the black sails was too far away. Even though Greet stood on tiptoe and squinted his eyes, he still could not see clearly. Ashuej saw his strange behavior and turned around. "Little Greet, what's the matter?" "Sister Uge, look over there." Greet tried hard to point out to her. "Is that a black flag flying on that ship far, far away? Let me take a look." The elf forest guard pressed Gretel's shoulder with one hand, stood on tiptoes, and put up the awning with the other hand to try hard to see. After looking at it for a moment, he said, "It's still too low to see clearly. Wait." She jumped up and disappeared from everyone's eyes. Greet followed the sound and saw the forest guard whizzing, using his hands and feet together, climbing up a big tree more agilely than a monkey. In a moment, she was already standing high on the top of the tree. The seemingly soft and delicate tip of the tall tree steadily bore her weight. Although it swayed in the wind, it did not lose its balance at all. After watching for a while, he suddenly jumped down and slid down the tree trunk. It is indeed a black flag. But, there is no skull pattern, and there are no other scary symbols. Even if it is a pirate, it may not be a big pirate, right? "No matter what, let's rush there as soon as possible," Gretel said with a solemn face. He made a casual move, and 3 phantom colts quietly appeared and mounted their horses. Bernard jumped on the silver moon deer, smoke billowing, and headed straight to the port. "Go to the mage tower. Report to the duty mage. When there may be enemies, only the mage tower can make the fastest and most appropriate response." The person on duty at the mage tower was a level 10 mage. He was not surprised when he heard this and thanked Gretel with a smile. By the way, he also adjusted the defense of the mage tower and pointed it out to Gretel. "Don't worry, we've seen it. It's best for that pirate ship to follow the rules. If he doesn't, he will be in trouble." Seeing how confident he was, Gretel couldn't say "I'll help him defend." He left the mage tower and went straight to the Flint and Jasmine Adventurer Supplies store. "Uncle Hawthorne. Sister Jasmine. A pirate ship is coming outside, be careful. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1032. Chapter 1029, You can make money when your friends come. If the glory Holy See comes. Greet rushed into the adventure store and immediately reported the news. Fortunately, he had some sense and did not yell out loud. Instead, he used the communication technique to transmit the message to the ears of the Hawthorne couple at a fixed point. There are customers in the store, so it's not easy to ruin other people's business. Mr. Hawthorne paused for a moment, glanced at Greet, and immediately turned around to continue bargaining with the guest. However, Ms. Jasmine put down her work and came over to greet them with a smile. "Mage Nordmark, Miss Sarah, Mr. Bernard, and this lady, come on, sit here. It's really hard to come here in this weather. Do you want an ice drink? Recently I used dragon tongue. I made a special drink with orchid, mint, and cactus." As he spoke, he had already led them to the dining area, took out a 5-liter stainless steel water jug, and pointed it inside. The water generating technique was activated, and clean water was poured into the water tank. Then, with a finger, a freezing ray flashed through. The cold air rose in the jug and it immediately began to freeze. However, it is not frozen from top to bottom, but condensed into small ice beads, which shows that Ms. Jasmine's spell control ability has reached an extremely sophisticated level. Freeze the ice water with one hand, and slightly hook the fingertips of the other. Thick agave leaves, green mint leaves, and purple-red cactus fruits rise up one after another and are thrown into the water jar. On the way, peel when it's time to peel, slice when it's time to slice, juice when it's time to juice. Then, Ms. Jasmine held the water jug in both hands and performed a series of operations in a dizzying manner. In the cold stainless steel water tank, the crisp sounds of ding bells and clatter kept ringing. In a moment, the brightly colored and cool-smelling ice water flew up on its own and poured into everyone's cup. "Come on, have a taste, have a taste." Ms. Jasmine also took a cup and sat across from them with a smile on her face, watching Cyrilla take a sip. Greet was a little anxious. "Why? Hey, it's okay." Ms. Jasmine waved her hand nonchalantly. "If you stay here for a long time, you will know that there is no month in this port where there are not a few ships flying black flags. After all, there is no other port nearby. Even pirates need a place to supply and repair ships. Put it away. Relax, the Mage Tower will watch." Greet breathed a sigh of relief. Ms. Jasmine looked at him carefully and suddenly smiled again. "Besides, with you and Miss Sarah here, what's so scary about a mere pirate ship?" Sarah nodded repeatedly beside her, holding the glass and chewing the ice cubes inside until it made a squeaking sound. "Isn't it just a bit of a pirate? As long as there is no strong person above level 17, she, Miss Cyrilla, will kill as many as she comes." While chatting here, suddenly another group of guests came in. Ms. Jasmine hurriedly got up to receive the reception. As soon as she walked away, Greet felt a pop in his ears, as if something was broken. The sounds of footsteps, voices, and noises from outside flooded in. "Boss, how do you sell this kettle?" "The kettle costs 10 gold coins." "So expensive?" "Hey, guest, this is completely tanned with the fur of the Hagen beast, and the seams are closed with the repair technique, so there won't be a drop of leakage. Look at this cover, it comes with a filter, even for raw water. If you filter it and drink it, you won't have diarrhea easily." The guest muttered a few words, but he still thought it was expensive. Ms. Jasmine walked over lightly. "This guest, how many people are in your party? If you buy more than 10 kettles, you can get an extra filter and a pack of water purifier for each kettle. A person's fighting ability will be reduced after having diarrhea for a day. How much is left?" With her clever persuasion, each of the adventurers bought a kettle. "Next, there is a mosquito net for one person, 15 gold coins each. Herbs that can repel mosquitoes when lit, cost 1 silver coin per bunch. Apply anti-mosquito lotion on your body, 1 gold coin per bottle. Kill those adventurers until their faces turn blue." Before they could protest, another group of people rushed in. "Boss, do you want to accept the goods?" "Get it." Ms. Jasmine immediately moved to the counter next to her. There were only clang and crash as large quantities of furs, animal bones, horns, and plants were placed on the counter, followed closely by Ms. Jasmine's quotation. "Oh, this snake's skin is good, it's completely peeled off, 50 gold coins. This batch of feathers is a bit incomplete. Let me take a look, the complete feathers are worth 1 gold coin each. The damaged ones can only be weighed and sold. 1 pound is worth 10 gold coins. This golden beauty, it's a pity that it was not dug out when it was about to bloom, and the roots were dug out. I can only give you 10 gold coins. Remember it next time, keep it in good condition, I will come out 100 gold coins." The guests who were buying adventure equipment looked at each other and all moved closer, their eyes shining brightly. Ding dang, Ms. Jasmine was happy to pay for the goods, and she quickly handed over bags of gold coins one after another. "Money. This is all money. Just look at this group of adventurers. Their number is about the same as theirs, but their strength is lower than theirs. If they go around the jungle, they will come out with thousands of gold coins. Boss, will the purchase price of these goods change this month?" "It should be the same this month. There is a quotation board in front of the counter. You can copy it. Ms. Jasmine smiled sweetly. There is also a quotation booklet with pictures. Each one costs 100 gold coins. You are welcome to buy it. Greet drank tequila ice water and watched helplessly as three of the group of adventurers spent a lot of money to buy the quotation book. They walked out of the store noisily. Two of them followed the group to buy water and food and prepare to go into the jungle. The other one held a beautifully designed booklet and rushed to the port. Sister Jasmine, can these things be sold too? Sure. Ms. Jasmine sorted out the harvest and sat back to chat with them. When Greet asked, she smiled confidently. This kind of thing cannot be hidden from anyone. Including the size of the port, how many ships can be parked, the size of the Mage Tower, the number of houses and people in the port, and the price of food, everything cannot be hidden from anyone. Besides, most of them risk takers also just want to make money safely. She poured herself a glass of ice water and cast her gaze towards the Mage Tower in the distance. I know what you are going to say. During this period, there have been more than 10 spies, large and small. There are small-scale pirates, there are mage towers, and there are people like us. When the glorious Holy Sea Army comes, we have our own way to deal with it. Do not worry. Greet shrugged and said nothing. Although Ms. Jasmine's tone was indifferent, a song from his previous life sounded in his mind. When friends come, there is good wine. If the jackal comes, there is a shotgun waiting for him. As long as you can deal with it. Occupy the advantageous location, unite with the natives, and unfold the 16-character technique. Is there anything that can't be done? Even if there are experts in the Holy See, there are experts in the Eagle Country. He remained silent. Ms. Jasmine smiled softly and turned her bright eyes to Ashu-i-sang. The elf was sitting casually, using the reed straw inserted in the cup to fiddle with the drink in his hand. The spear used by the forest guard was leaning on the corner of the table. It looked like just a wooden spear, but the murderous intent condensed on the tip of the spear was hardened. It was clear at a glance that the owner must be extremely powerful. Ms. Jasmine glanced at it, turned her gaze, and smiled at the elf. By the way, what do you call this lady? Ashmoonsong, nice to meet you. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of Pith new book The Masked King by the boss of this group. At first, it was because my mother didn't agree with me becoming a singer. It was my senior year in high school, which was still very important, so I had to cover my face and put on makeup to hide my identity. I never imagined that by accident, I would become the king of the Chinese music scene. Su Le explained sincerely to reporters. You want to say that it was the Chinese music scene that made you successful? The reporter asked. Huh, Su Le raised his chin, am I not the one who made the Chinese music scene successful? After all, the new songs nowadays are so bad. It's hard for us to spread the word. The reporter said, and aren't you a little too arrogant? Then wait a moment. Su Le glanced at his watch. When I achieve success in the world in a few days, you can send it. Reporter. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Jialan 2020. Chapter 1033. When I was 10 years old, my father left my mother. In the backyard of the Flint and Jasmine Adventurer Supply Store, a big tree swayed with wide leaves, covering most of the yard. The cool breeze was blowing under the tree, and Ms. Jasmine was sitting in the shade with a distant look. He received a letter from afar, and then he packed up his weapons, put on his leather armor, and said he would leave for a while. Before leaving, he kissed his mother, hugged me, and said he would bring me beautiful feathers. The kind I've never seen before. He never came back. He loves me very much. He taught me my bow and arrow, martial arts, ability to get close to nature, and magic. He also taught me reading, literacy, and Elvish language bit by bit. I didn't want to learn, but wanted to play, so he grabbed a handful of grass seeds and held it in his hand. The grass blades grew up and intertwined into a little green rabbit, jumping and jumping in front for me to chase. I just want to know his whereabouts. If he passes away, I also hope to bring him back and bury him with his mother. As he spoke, he choked, turned his head suddenly, and closed his eyes forcefully. AI-11UGE listened carefully, stretched out a hand across the table, and held her palm. Don't worry, I will try my best to find it for you. What's your father's name, Heimer Gracias Starry Night? Well, a few years ago, I did hear that there were elves from the Starry Night family traveling outside. I'll help you. Ask around. They lowered their voices and spoke quietly. In the room next to the bed, Greet also took out his injection kit from the space bag and placed them on the table. Vaccine bottles, syringes, alcohol, sterile cotton balls. This is the latest research and development result of the Institute, a vaccine against yellow fever. At present, it seems that the safety and protective effect are still there, but the protection time has not been determined. After a while, it should be widely used among adventurers' promotion. Really? That's great. Mr. Hawthorne rolled up his sleeves according to Greet's instructions, exposing his left upper arm. He was both surprised and a little worried. Our anti-mosquito incense, anti-mosquito oil, and mosquito nets cannot always provide complete protection. Magic equipment is expensive. With vaccines, adventurers will be much safer in the jungle. That's it? He glanced at the receiving area in front and then at the processing area on the right side of the yard. I'm afraid the sales of our goods will not be good. Ah, this will definitely not happen, Gretel said confidently. The yellow fever vaccine can only protect against yellow fever, but not other diseases, such as malaria. Besides, even if you don't get sick, no one wants to be bitten by hundreds of mosquitoes, right? That's true. Besides, relying on external help is not as good as relying on yourself. Mr. Hawthorne turned his head and stared at his left upper arm, watching the cool alcohol cotton ball being wiped once and again, and the injection needle approaching with a cold light. He subconsciously closed his eyes and gritted his teeth. You can be gentler. There was a sudden pain in the deltoid muscle of my upper arm. This tall warrior, who was 9.9 meters tall, trembled all over and almost jumped. Ouch! What are you afraid of? Isn't it lighter than a scratch with a knife? Ms. Jasmine had wiped away her tears and opened the door and came in. Seeing the change in her husband's face, she couldn't help but smile. When you're fighting with someone, you're scratched by a knife or hit by an arrow, but you don't even grunt when you're stabbed by such a small needle. Come on, I'll treat you, okay? As he spoke, a ball of light green light gathered on his fingertips, and he was about to press it on the deltoid muscle of his husband's upper arm. Gretel quickly stopped. It can't be cured. Just press it with a cotton ball for 1 minute. Once the treatment is done, the effectiveness of the vaccine will be gone. God knows they have stumbled into more than one hole here. Especially when cultivating cells, if the treatment continues, the cells will struggle to take a breath, and the viruses will all be gone. Later, it was the same during the vaccination. There was a moldy guy who inoculated a white mouse. His hand shook and blood started to flow from the poke. He was afraid that the mouse would die, so he secretly poured a little healing potion. Then, among the batch of white mice, only the one to which the healing potion was poured failed to be poisoned. It took a long time to find out the reason, and then repeated the experiment to verify. When vaccinating, absolutely, no matter what, you cannot throw healing spells on the recipient just because he is bleeding, afraid, or any other reason. Really, this kind of situation has never been encountered in the previous life. In the previous life, most people were afraid of infection and used iodine to rub the injected area. Ms. Jasmine waved the green light, gave her husband a blank look, and poked her husband's forehead with her slender fingertips. Then he rolled up his sleeves and handed his upper arm to Gretel. Come on, give me a try too. Although I can communicate naturally, I have to take some precautions when I go out. In case of exhaustion of mental power and broken magic equipment, this is a life-saving thing. Greet took a step back and put back the syringe in his hand. He raised his hand and stopped in front of Ms. Jasmine, with a face full of embarrassment. But Ms. Jasmine, this vaccine has only been tested on humans on a large scale. Half-elves or something like that, I'm not sure it will be effective. But you are also a half-elf, right? Ashuej asked curiously from the side. Haven't you tried it? Haven't you tried it on yourself? Gretel really tried. Although it is not the first batch, the knight's physique, the first batch to do the safety test will lead to inaccuracies, but the safety test and the effectiveness test have all passed. For this reason, he not only injected himself with the virus, but also gritted his teeth and let mosquitoes bite him 20 or 30 times. His arms were swollen like corns. Cyrilla was greatly distressed. After watching him being bitten, she immediately sprayed the mosquito into ice slag with a breath of dragon breath. That's good if it works. Come on, give me a shot. Gretel couldn't resist, so she had no choice but to give Ms. Jasmine a shot. After the injection, Ms. Jasmine pressed a cotton ball on her left upper arm and looked at Gretel curiously. Are you also a half-elf? I can't tell at all. As soon as she said this, she was lightly kicked by her husband and she quickly shut up. Greet pretended not to hear and smiled, then took out a cold iron box. Uncle Hawthorne, this is a recently developed vaccine. You can give it to adventurers for free in the early stage, but you can also charge for it. The most important thing is to collect the protection status of the vaccine. Soon the Mage Tower will also promote vaccination. You can use it here. It's over, you can go to the Mage Tower to buy. Mr. Hawthorne took it in surprise, turned around and put it into the freezer for storage. Ms. Jasmine nodded to them and followed them in together. AI-11 Uge's ears perked up slightly, and soon she heard a quiet chat inside. Hey, do you think his father is an elf or his mother is an elf? Have you ever thought about looking for the family? How about we take advantage of MSU songs here and help him ask? Other people know everything about other people. If he doesn't tell you, don't ask so many questions. Ashu Isong's eyes flashed. She also wanted to know which elf family Gretel belonged to, and she also wanted to take him back to get married. But no rush, no hurry. Anyway, I have to go to the research institute. We have been working together for a long time, so I will ask him slowly. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks at Logo Yawushin for the reward of 100 starting coins.